In this video, I'm going to break down work-life balance for small business owners. Now, I've been running a business for close to 15 years, and I've gone through some severe things, changes, situations that's happened in my life. And it's helped me understand how work-life balance is a complete myth. So I'm going to tell you and give you some ideas about what it actually is. And then we'll go over some tips, things you can do to get the best out of your business so it doesn't affect your life. Because when life changes, when things happen, your business needs to be able to adjust with you. Now, for me, over the last 7 years, me and my wife have been on a massive IVF journey. And to date, we have had 12 IVF rounds, ranging from the UK and over in Greece. So once we kind of spent a lot of money in the UK and we used up our free goes that we were allowed on the NHS, and then going to London, we then decided to go over to Greece and use one of the world-renowned clinics over there. And thankfully it worked, and we've got a beautiful young son. But to try and get a second child, we've continued, and now we are up to 12, round 12, I should say, spending a fortune of money, which we've done so on credit cards, and we've had to refinance our house in order to afford it. So I understand the how life can suddenly kick you up the arse, and you have to find ways of adapting. Now, there was no other way apart from this affecting my business. It was going to. So with IVF, it can happen at any time. You plan a cycle, you start taking the drugs, or my wife does, and then as soon as her body's ready, you go in and you go through the whole procedure. And obviously, if you get pregnant, you know the issues and the timings with pregnancy. And we've had multiple miscarriages, so we've got several weeks in and quite a far into one pregnancy before miscarrying. So life events happen. You can't avoid it. But what you need to make sure is that it limits how much affects your work, and the opposite way around. You need to make sure that your work doesn't affect your home life. Look, as a small business owner, trying to switch your mind off is near on impossible. Even if it's the minute things, even if you go home and think, well, I'm not going to concentrate on work anymore, I'm just going to spend time with my family, there'll always be those thoughts in your heads. And it could be from, I really don't want to speak to that customer. I really hope they're not calling me. I've got a tough day at work tomorrow. I've had a tough day today. Or it could even be the more positive things. Oh, that's a great idea. I really want to do that. Hold on. I need to find a pen and write them down. And that is stuff that's interfering with your home life at work. And it's natural for that to happen. You can't avoid that happening. And for me, IVF and having children was always on my mind. And when I was at work, I was constantly thinking about this. How are we going to get about around this? How are we going to raise more money? How are we going to plan, schedule next steps? And then when I was at home, I was thinking, oh my God, I've had such a bad day, or something's happened. This has happened. Now I've got to think about IVF and have a conversation with my wife about it. And I really don't want to. And then I started getting a bit snappy and bitey because I didn't want to talk about IVF. All I wanted to do was just think about what's happening at work or try and forget everything. And there was no way to split that. And there's just not, as a small business owner, particularly when your business is just earning enough or just a little bit more, or maybe even less, for your monthly or weekly wage. And you can't afford to drop any balls. So you've constantly got to be thinking about it every single day. The one will always affect the other. You just haven't got that ability like we used to have to turn off. And that's particularly so with mobile phones, having mobile phones now, we constantly have this plan. When we walk in the house, we're going to put our mobile phones in a box and that's it. And we're not going to concentrate for the rest of the evening. But then constantly on my mind, I'm thinking, but what happens if someone has an issue with my CRM system? Because we sell CRMs and marketing. What happens? They're messaging me. Or what happens if one of my customers can't get hold of me during the day and they need to ask a question now? And my service shouldn't be based around that, because people should know that not to contact me after 5 o'clock. But then I always say, unless it's an emergency. An emergency is always kind of this arbitrary word, which is kind of what they consider as an emergency, or I consider as an emergency. And so I'm always having an excuse to have my mobile phone with me. And because I've always got my mobile phone with me, I'm constantly, whenever I got a second, I'm looking at it going, I'll flick through Facebook, see what's happening, or LinkedIn. And we do that because we're addicted to our mobile phones. Now, I'm really good at not doing it until my son goes to bed. So I put it down and we play and we eat and we do all the housework and everything like that. And then, it's normally down, but then I'm looking at it. Okay, has anyone messaged me the last 2 hours? Okay, and I'll need to focus that. And then I'm like that till I go to bed. And there's just no way to split because of the way that we use our mobile phones anymore. It's impossible to disconnect. So we always blend the two in together. And as a small business owner, same at work, when my wife messages me or things like that, I'll break away and I'll message back and things like this. It always blends in. Work-life balance as a small business owner is a bit of a myth. And when people say you need to be achieving the work-life balance, what you need to be achieving is harmony across everything. You need to be making sure that everything is in a place that you want it. So work is working the way you want it, and home life is working the way that you want it. And trying not to get that imbalance from each area. So your home life can't imbalance your work life, and your work life shouldn't be imbalanced in your home life. And because they affect each other, it's making sure that everything is right. And I'm going to give you some tips soon about what I've done over the last 7 years to make sure that that happens the way that I want it to. Even though I'm not brilliant, as I said, when I go home, I'm still on my mobile phone. So, I'm not brilliant at it, like the 100% that I want to be, but I'm moving more and more in the right direction. And when we went through these IVF procedures, when I had to take out, I think at one point I had to take out almost 3 months out of work because of the issues we had with one round, that it was so detrimental to my work. And I learned from it about how to navigate and make sure that that didn't happen again. So it's making sure that happens. Look, I suppose moving on to what work-life balance does do is understanding that you can't put 100% in both areas, and that they do affect each other. And what I mean by this is, for a long time, I constantly envied those people with massive businesses and who put everything into the business, and we're flying, we're making millions of pounds every year and things like that. People in my network. And I was like, oh my God, I want to be so like you. And they were like, yeah, but I'm divorced. I spent so much time in my business that I didn't spend enough time at home. And that got me thinking. I was like, is that the case? And it's not the case with everyone, admittedly, but there was a kind of a trend going on, which I looked at a little bit more. And I realized that people who were putting 100% into their work were putting 0% into their personal life. And the other way around, I see a lot of people putting 100% into their personal life and leaving no time for work. Now, there's nothing wrong with either angle if you are content in doing so, if you are happy. So if you want to not have much of a home life, maybe you don't have a family, or you like concentrating on work 24/7, then throwing yourself 100% into work makes sense. And it's the same the other way around. If you've got a growing family and you really want to be that person that is a center hub of your family, and you want to be at home for your family, and that means that you haven't got any time for work, that's absolutely fine too. It's what makes you happy and where you want to be. But then for people such as myself, I want to get that balance in between. I want 50% of my time to be in my work, and I want 50% of my time to be in my home life. And I suppose that's the only area of work-life balance that the term work-life balance ever makes sense. So it's making sure that I've got 50% in both areas. And what I mean by this is I go to work at 8 a.m. and I work till 5:30, and I'm there should my wife or my family message me or call me, or maybe pop down to the office and come and say hello. I said my child is young, so currently not in full-time school, so he pops in as well, and that allows me the time to spend with my family during the day. And then in the evening when I go home, I'm able to put myself focus on my family and not my work for a few hours. And I want to extend that. I want to be able to make sure I can do that all night. So once I finished and my son has gone to bed, then I can spend more time with my wife instead of getting on my phone and looking through Facebook and Instagram and YouTube videos and trying to figure out how I can develop myself for the next day. Now, development's good, but I want to be able to find that time during the day. Or I want to have a structure in place with my wife, so my wife knows that I'm going to be training on these evenings. So let's plan something other nights, because I really want to focus on my training on like a Thursday night maybe, or a Sunday evening. So all that is scheduled, and that works into my family as well as my business. And so it's having that understanding that if you are going to spend time putting 50% of your effort into your family, into your personal life. And I'm using family here as a word, but I appreciate not everyone has a family. And when I say family, I don't mean that you need kids for it to be a family. I mean, your personal life. But from my point of view, it's my family. I don't play many sports anymore. So it is heavily based around my family. So when I'm spending 50% on my family, I got to realize that I'm not putting 100% into my business. So if I'm not going to be a millionaire by the end of the year, and I'm sat there going, I'm not a millionaire by the end of the year, I'm going to be like, but that's fine, because I spent a lot of time with my son. I spent a lot of time making sure that he was okay. I spent a lot of time playing with him, helping with his development, taking him to school, being there at lunchtimes, taking days off. Should he have a hospital appointment or like a checkup, or should he want to go to the zoo one day and I can take him there, or to the park or to the lake or something like that. And I'm like, I did all those things with him. So I'm not a millionaire. Fine. I understand that. I appreciate that. I can work on it a bit more. And maybe I can say to my wife, look, for the next 3 months, I really want to focus 60-70% of my time over to my business, just so I can up it to the next level instead of it going at the pace that it currently is. And you've got to understand where you are in terms of your work and your life, to understand how much effort you're putting into each, and never be alarmed if one is not as high as what other people should be. It's what makes you happy. You got to understand it based on how you feel, basically. So this brings me on to what I discovered over the last kind of 7 years with all the IVF that we've been on and the mistakes that we made, because it's been highly frustrating at times. And I've kind of came to the end of my senses several times, and I've wanted to quit work. I've wanted to kind of, I don't know, so many different things have got to me because I didn't handle it too well, because I didn't know how to. I never once expected IVF to kind of be as intense, impactful into my life, into my business, as what it was. I thought it would be a bit more of a walk in the park, and it's more my wife than me. I'll be able to do these things, but it just didn't happen that way, and it just doesn't. And the one thing that the one mistake that I made, and this comes onto the tips of what you can do, is thinking I can run my life and my business on my own. And what I mean by that is not having anyone there to help me with my business. And I don't mean I needed employees, but having someone that could step in. So these days that I had to spend in the hospital or in the IVF clinic, and they were sometimes quite often full days, when I was unable to answer calls or emails or do people's work for them, do their emails, do their websites, back when we did that, I would get really frustrated with myself, my wife, the clinic, and I would show that, and it would impact on my life. So work was kind of dragging; it was getting behind because I wasn't giving it the time that it was needed. So I was getting snappy and grumpy and taking it out on the people around me. And that was one of the biggest mistakes that I made, is not having people around to help me and realizing the financial implications of that. So I sat there going, I need this money. I have to have this money. I can't afford to outsource it. It's going to cost me a lot of money for someone else to do it. And because of that, I never, ever did it. When if I took a step back and incorporated that aspect of using freelancers, which we do now, into my business, then it meant that they would have been there and they would have been priced into my business, into my products, into my services from the very beginning, which means that when my life started kicking me up the ass and not doing what I wanted it to, I would have been able to get freelancers, or the freelancers I was connected with, PAs, VAs, illustrators, website designers. I would have been able to outsource them the work and still would have got paid a percentage of that job coming in. I would have obviously paid them. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I made, is being a small business owner thinking that I could do this alone. And if you're sat there thinking I've got no choice but to do it alone, you need to understand that there is no such thing as work-life balance. It is your company 24/7. And if things in your business don't go the same way, it will start impacting your life and it will start giving you a kick up the ass. And because of that, you need to make sure that you got systems in place. You don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what's going to happen. And the one thing that I guarantee no one ever wants to change is, no one ever wants to give up on, is their life, the personal aspects of their life, the family, things like that. If we had a choice between giving up on work and giving up on family, I'm pretty sure 90% of us would say that we would give up work on our work and change what we're doing or do different things rather than give up on our family. You know, there's a great phrase I once learned. You know, when you're watching all these shows and people have got guns to people's heads, you know, everyone says, please don't shoot me, I've got a family. No one ever says, please don't shoot me, I've got work tomorrow. And that's so true, that, you know, the one thing we would never give up is our family, but we would always give up what we do. And I think it's easier to get in place people that can help us with our work, because more people are experienced with the stuff that we do, than trying to get people experienced with our lives and getting them to step in should we need to. The last thing I'm ever going to do is get someone to go with my wife to an IVF clinic to have the procedure. I want to be there. I want to be that person. I want to experience it. I want to be that person supporting. And the same should anything happen to my son. I want to be the person that takes him to the park. I want to be the person that takes him to the lake. I don't want to give him to someone else to do that. I want to be the person there. Some people do. And again, if that makes you happy, that is right for you. So if you want to get someone to help take your family or do something that takes them out, takes them to the parks, things like that, you know, that's what schools are for, you know. In some ways, sometimes I think that's the only thing good schools are good for. But you know, that's what the aspect is. So, you know, you've got to make sure that you've got systems in place to make sure that you can manage work should something happen in your life. Don't fall for the myth that you need to get work-life balance. Don't think that when you go home, you need to stop thinking about work. That doesn't happen. And forcing it upon yourself won't make it work if you are not that person. I still yet to meet someone that can forget about work as a small business owner. I mean, one of my brother-in-law's, his favorite sentence is, when I clock in, I turn off for the job that he does. And that's great if you're employed and that's what you want to be. But as a small business owner, you will always be concentrating on both your life, your personal aspects of it, and your work. So that work-life balance will never be what you ever expected it to be. You've got to find a way to manage it, and you've got to find a way to have things in place in your work should something in your life cause you to have to step back from that job. From what you are doing. And I don't mean long term, I mean day to day, a couple of days a week or a couple of days a month or something like that, that you've always got that. So make sure your pricing structure is in place to make that happen. So yeah, again, if you want to know more about my journey, and if you want to know, understand about the things I've been through, and the things I've been through and how I can help, guide, and inform, then I am always happy to give away all the information about what I've done for free. It's good to share, and I'm always interested in hearing other people's stories and what they've been through and how they've overcome it with their small business. So yeah, thanks for listening.